What is going on, folks? Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Secondhand Talent. Thank you to Luke Chu for the Ghost Bear heads, which are slightly off camera over there to my right. Thank you to Tiny Steiner for being my tiny co-host. And thank you to Mark Spusta for the art. But most importantly, thank you to this week's guest. We have with us the one and only. He is a troubadour. He is a singer. He is a songwriter. He is a producer. He is a DJ. He is so many things that we can't even list them all before running out of time for this week's episode. He is the one, the only Mal Thursday. Mal, thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thank you, Steiner. Great to be here.
It is really, really awesome to have you on the show. We really don't, we'll get into that in just a second. First, I got to ask, we did get connected in a rather roundabout sort of way, to which we'll address later in the conversation. But the first time I let you know that I had a podcast called Secondhand Talent, and I asked if you wanted to be on it. What did the term secondhand talent, like, what do you think of when that term came into your head?
Well, I thought maybe it was, either self-deprecating or talking about influences, because I know that I wouldn't have any songs. Our band wouldn't have any songs if the Kinks never existed or the Stones, didn't get together in 1962 or whatever. So, so I thought maybe it was about influences, but I'm probably wrong.
I mean, what I love about that question is that over 100 episodes in, I get a different answer every time. And I've never heard either of those as tongue in cheek or as what was it? How was it that you put it? The second one?
The influences, the standing on the shoulder of giants, as it were.
Yeah. It's so interesting for you to say that. To address the first part, it is somewhat tongue in cheek, actually. I don't know if I've told this on the show before, but the name, actually, I used to call myself a secondhand comedian. Privately, mostly. But the joke to myself was, my name isn't the one on the marquee, but if you need 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes, like, just give me a microphone, give me 5 minutes to prepare, and I'll keep them occupied, So I always kind of thought of myself as a secondhand comedian. In that sense. So it is kind of a tongue-in-cheek aspect of it, but it's kind of a part of what you said about being on the shoulders of others. It's also meant to remind ourselves, or for me to remind myself, and hopefully to remind anybody who's reading or listening or watching, that the love of music didn't start with us, and it's our job to pass that love down to the next generation. I appreciate it. Well, it's really special having you on the show. Let's just get right to it, folks. That song that you hear every week that leads into our show. Well, that's a song by a band called Lonely Moans, and it's a song called Shoot the Cool. And my friend Mal here covers some of those songs. And what's fun about that band is that my uncle was in it, and
I was in it briefly as well. They were a power trio, but I played organ. I came up and we did Standell's Sometimes Good Guys Don't Wear White, and it was. And then for a while, Shambi moved over to guitar, and Kent Garver, the late great bass player of my first band, the Malarians, was in the band for a while too. But we never recorded, those great records that they made.
Well, there
Was
was.
just the three guys and
I'm
Lonely
going to
Bones.
reach for my notes here because actually, speaking of my Uncle Sam, one project he did want me to ask you about was the Lonely Moan Mala session. Um,
Oh, the Malted Fuck sessions.
yes.
Yes. Now I think I may still have the reel, but we went in and we did. This was at a time that my band was about to break up, and I was sick. Like I didn't want group democracy. I wanted to be able to call shots and whatnot. So it was an attempt to put together, a noisier, more Stooges MC5 kind of sound than the more, 1966 retro thing that my band had been doing. And we did I Got a Right by the Stooges and Don't Want You Either, a song I wrote, and a song called This. And I only have rough mixes that have somehow survived the mists of time, but I'm hoping that I still have the real.
Well, from what my uncle says, some pretty great songs were recorded during those collaboration sessions. So whatever reels you do have, I hope they do see the light of day at some point.
There's one track that I released as on the end of the Malarians Shambolic live album with Mike Sewell from Moans playing guitar with us. Finished in This Town is the name of the record, and the version of Don't Want You Either, which I not with my vocal, but with the Kent's vocal on it, is on that. And I would reissue that if I could find the tapes. I stored all my old masters from the 80s and 90s at my parents' house, and they had sort of a nefarious handyman who grew weed in the attic unbeknownst to my dad, and he ended up walking away with a bunch of multi-track reels that he had no way of playing. There's no way that he had a 16-track machine.
No, that's the most frustrating part about. I'm going to be honest. That's immediately where my head went to. Is like, what the fuck are you even going to do with this? Nobody is going to know what to do with this. You're not going to get anything for this at any pawn shop and it's like, it's the most useless thing to steal. It's bulky. It's like, it's worth nothing to you. It is literally barely worth what it's made of. But it's worth so much to whoever it is that created it. And
he did things like there was two reels, one was side one and side two of a rock opera, or it was a mock opera by my very first band had gotten together in the summer of '88 and recorded a rock opera about William F. Buckley called Me and God at Yale. And it's brilliant, it's great, and now there's only half of it in its master form, so like I'm in the middle of reissuing some of the stuff from the guy who wrote those rock operas. Is my friend Jim Chanson, also a novelist. He's got a great novel you can get on Amazon, or maybe your local bookseller in Milwaukee, called Speakeasy.
Not far from Chicago, folks.
I know, just to get on the Hiawatha.
But let's put a link to that book in the description of the episode, along with all the links to Mal's music.
Fantastic. And this guy was so brilliant. He just died this fall, and if it wasn't for him, I'd never have played. We started a band where 3/5 of the band couldn't play their instruments, and I was part of the 3/5. And him and Charlie Nealand, a great New York musician, well, he was also from Milwaukee. Were the two guys who could play. And Jim wrote 6 rock operas. He has 6 unreleased rock operas. So my label, Chunk Archives Recordings, I'm working with my former bandmates and Jim's brother, and we're going to release a a great, like in 1991 or 2, I think the summer of 91 or 2, he recorded about 25, 26 songs from all of his operas up to that point. And so that's in the hopper. That's coming out in 2026. It's called Chansonesque by Jim Chanson.
Well, there you have it, folks. Potentially breaking news depending on when this episode airs. But, for all of our regular viewers, readers, and listeners, you'll notice that this episode is not on the normal trajectory of the way we do things here at Secondhand Talent. And that's because it's not often that we really get to have, all the technical stuff you do we'll get into, but we don't have firsthand talent on the show very often, and those are the folks who actually do the thing and play on stage, and obviously, you certainly do much more than that, but. You did mention, forming your first band and kind of reeling it back in a little bit. Talk about a little bit how that first band formed. You mentioned being part of the 3/5 that couldn't play instruments. So talk a little bit about getting roped into that experience, not playing anything, and what was the next step from there?
Well, it was my first semester at college. I went to Hampshire College where I met Sam Newsom. And, I was just bouncing off the walls and, I was looking for like-minded individuals who shared, because when I was in high school, nobody liked the music I liked, they were all squares, but I was just kind of randomly walking the halls of the dormitory Dakin at Hampshire, and I heard music coming out of Jim's room, and I think it was the Elvis Costello and the Attractions compilation album, Taking Liberties. And we just struck up a conversation and a friendship. And Mark Solomon was living downstairs, and the three of us had all entered that fall of 1980. And
I remember some story, sorry to interject, but I remember some story about Sam hearing someone playing Illinois Enema Bandit at some point and making friends that way as well. So it's a very sincere way to make friends at that point in time, folks, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, music it's a uniter. But so after that first semester, we decided to form a band. We were going to be called The Answer, which there was a band called The Answer from San Bernardino in 1965. Little did we know. But so his two friends from Milwaukee transferred to Hampshire, and we had the five of us, and Charlie Nealand had a great Rickenbacker bass, and he could play, so well and play multiple instruments. And, Jim was coming into his own as a songwriter, and he had written a number of songs about a failed high school relationship that were quite good, but then he got better, like he started writing more interesting stuff and more rocking stuff that we could play with our rudimentary skills. And he had one called Insects that I really liked. I should revive that one. That song was a killer.
What more do you expect? I mean, from a band at that age, but so which one of the three instruments was it that you didn't know how to play?
For me, it was I wanted to be an organ player.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was inspired by all that 60s garage stuff, Question Mark and the Mysterians, the Standells, all that Vox organ sound. Like you can see over my shoulder, I have a 2016 Vox, modern day Vox Continental.
I was peeping that out of the side of my eye. I'm not gonna lie. I was taking a look at that. It matches that Alice Cooper poster very nicely. I like.
Yeah, it's just really color coordinated. Yes,
I like the placement. It looks good.
And the thing I didn't, I just boldly stumbled forward into playing, and we were listening to some of the old stuff, and I was shocked. I tell you, that I was playing in time and in tune and all that. But we went to New York City and bought a Farfisa organ at Manny's. We bought a drum set in Boston, and we played a few gigs, and eventually, the brilliant songwriter Jim Chanson, nay Erickson, he had he had some schizophrenia that was exacerbated. I mean, if you have schizophrenic tendencies, don't take too much acid. It's not good for you.
PSA, folks. Don't
always know your dealer.
Don't allegedly take too much acid, and or know your alleged dealer prior to taking such acid.
And never take more than you can handle.
And don't eat the brown acid.
But anyway,
back to our regularly scheduled programming.
We continued to play. I remember we played a show at Smith College, all women's college in beautiful Northampton, Massachusetts. And I had started to I would have one number. And when we first started playing, it was the Magnificent Seven by The Clash. And I did a horrible fake Joe Strummer impression. But we had the song that I chose for us to play circa 83 was It's a Crying Shame by The Gentlemen from Dallas, Texas in 1966. And that I sort of, created my onstage character with that one. We played that one at the Mal Thursday Quintet played at Nomad in Austin last week, and we played that one second. I'm still playing that one anyway.
That's incredible over 40 years later to still be rocking the same tunes.
Well, in a way, it's good. In a way, it's bad. But
okay, fine. Wait, all right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
But I love that song, and I can sing it in my sleep.
Fast forwarding a little bit, though, I do recall some adventures in college, and some of the earlier band years involving the Dwarves and Lonely Moans and Suburban Nightmare and other such.
Yeah, so I formed my own band, and it was garage rock. I was going to do, in the mid '80s there was a garage revival scene that was quite. It burned briefly and brightly, let's say. And so we were a neo garage band, and the Malarians was the name. A name that I made up, and yet within a few years, a Spanish ska band had formed with that name. And I'm like, I made that name up. It's not a word. And yet here they must have seen our record and said, oh, they'll never know. So that's why I don't reissue any of our old stuff. Is there's still brand confusion to this day.
That's insane.
So when I was in that band, we played with Suburban Nightmare, Halloween of it must have been 86, Halloween 86, I think, and we wanted to play the big Hampshire Halloween party, which was this legendary, all-nighter drug fest. So they got the Del Fuegos, featuring famous children's entertainer Dan Zanes. He wasn't a children's entertainer then. But anyway, they got the gig. So we played the night before. And then we still had the sort of, the dancing hippies. We had a very primitive light setup where we just stuck one of those bowl lights, like with a clamp on the
little
on
like
the bottom
disco
of the bridge.
ball or whatever. Yeah.
And this one naked hippie kept dancing very close to the lights, casting shadows of his penis on the ceiling, and his pubic hair was flying off and like burning in the light. So that didn't smell great, but it was spectacle, And then the next night, when they had the Del Fuegos, we got a gig in town in Northampton, and Paul from Suburban Nightmare, Black Dahlia of the Dwarves, comes out and he's like, "Hello, Amherst." And then somebody in the back of the room goes, "It's Northampton." So that was funny. And they were great. I had a tape of that show too for the longest. I mean, I had a cassette Holocaust in the 90s. I mean, I had so much. I have there was unreleased stuff and just so much lost media. It's heartbreaking. So, but I don't want to. I did not come to be depressing and
at a certain point, like it's like when it's irrecoverable, and you can pine about it for so long. But is that really going to resolve the,
Well, there's at least occasionally there's a happy ending. So I had a second generation 2-track cassette of this band Lyres, Lyres, from Boston. Great. One of the greatest, if not the greatest, garage revival band ever. And it was from the Rusty Nail, which was a club in Western Massachusetts in a town of 3,000 people. It was this old roadhouse. And it was in the middle of it was right on the street with a bunch of neighbors. But, anyway, touring bands would play there because I think they got paid in cash. Whereas if they played at the university or whatever, they'd get a check. So I saw James Brown there, the Buzzcocks. I saw the Rockettes with Danny B. Harvey. We're playing a show with him this month. And anyway, so I had this great cassette that I listened to often, and it had the vocals on one side and the band on the other. And I, of course, lost it. And then years later, I'm like, I need to find that. I need to find that recording. So I was able to get a master of it. Still stereo separated with the vocals on one side. It was, I think the tape deck at the club was too slow. So everything was a half step too fast. So I took it in the studio, pitch corrected it, mixed it into, stereo mono. And now it's just been released. It's Lyres on Fire at the Rusty Nail, 1985. And the title is ironic. Because the club burned down 4 months later.
Link in the description. It was prescient, folks. It was prescient.
They were touring a record called On Fire, FYRE.
Were there any other spontaneous combustions on the tour, or was that the only? The fact that you have to think about it is bad. Like I was expecting a hard no.
No, just the pubic hair.
That shit's insane. Like, I'm sorry, but like, what? That's.
Well, it was a hippie school. We were.
Well, I mean, I know. Well, Fish played there a bunch at that point in time. I mean,
yeah, my band, the Malarians, opened for Fish at the same club we played with Suburban Nightmare, right before they changed their name to the Dwarves, and the Fish show, we were doing a residency where we'd play every Saturday night during the month of January or whatever, February, whatever. And I come in and he's like, "Hey, you guys aren't closing tonight." And I'm like, "Really? Who are these people?" But they had a Hammond organ and a Fender Rhodes, and he's like, "But you can use their keyboards." Paige said it was okay. Paige said, "Hey, you can use our rig."
That's cool.
We opened and I was playing all this Fender Rhodes and like confusing my bandmates with all these jazzy, wrong notes coming through the monitors. Because I was like, yeah, Fender Rhodes. And the Hammond was sweet too. Because I was playing a Farfisa, and this was great. He had a Leslie, had the whole deal. So it was awesome.
Well, at that point, yeah, that sounds about it tracks like that. This
was pre-Lawn Boy, I think, or maybe it was Lawn Boy era.
Must have been right before.
Or Pictures of Nectar. What's the one? The first album. What's the anyway? We also played Nectar's up in Burlington, but we didn't play with them.
That's awesome. I mean, like was the band cool or I mean,
Yeah. I mean, Paige was like, "Here, yeah, use my Hammond."
yeah, it
Yes.
doesn't get much
Don't have
cooler
to,
than that, to be honest. I mean, that's
yeah,
pretty.
that was then, and it was packed out. I mean, I hadn't heard of them, but obviously they had already their legend had already begun.
Yeah,
So it was
they're still pretty. I mean, pretty relevant. I would say. Um, I think at the time of this taping, they announced the Sphere dates. So we'll see. Mayhap might go check out that old place. What was it that made you decide to go from just being in a band to having your own label?
well when the Malarians made their first album, uh, we didn't we didn't have any connections with any labels or anything like that. So we made up our own label and called it Chunk Records. And it was the guitar player worked as he did construction and he was doing some work at the VA hospital. And there was a guy who'd gotten his head, dented with a submarine hatch. And now his only words were chunk and a couple of others. So that was
I
the
was
origin.
hoping it wasn't going to be anything chunk related, but it absolutely is.
Yeah, there you go. So and then, when we split up a couple years later, we had put out, we had let another band use the logo for their record, a band called DeMilo's. And that's a very rare record. I don't even know. I don't have it. But then, 1991, I'm inspired because like indie rock is blowing up and, ultimately this wasn't necessarily the best thing for us, but, music that I'd liked was getting over, cause I had liked all the sub pop bands and all that stuff. And, Mudhoney and the first Nirvana record and stuff. So when Nirvana broke huge and, I was working at a record store in Northampton, Mass, and Dinosaur Jr. had some success, and Sebadoh, Lou Barlow's band after Dinosaur, with Eric Gaffney and Jason Lowenstein was taken off, and they had done a single called "Gimme Indie Rock." Sub Pop was doing the singles club, so I'm like, I'm going to do 45s. I'm going to revive Chunk Records and do 45s. So we did the Mal Thursday and the Cheetahs Christmas record. A Message to Santa Claus, which was a profane rewrite of Get Out of Dallas, which is my greatest hit that missed. And ironically enough, last night I played that song for the first time in many, many years because we're playing a Christmas show in Austin. So we're going to open with that,
Nice.
And so anyway, after I put my record out, I'm like, well, now I know. So I was living at this old 18th century house with really low ceilings. I banged my head a lot on the ceilings. But our landlords went bankrupt, Carlo and John, and they're like, "Hey, man, you can just live here until the bank says you can't live here anymore." So I was living rent free, and I was able to save enough money to put out 3 singles. Yeah, I did New Radiant Storm King, Angry Johnny and the Killbillies, and the Veronica Cartwrights. And, those did really well. I got distributors. I got, was able to sell out of, I sold out of 2 pressings of the Cheetahs Christmas record.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, like as a longtime vinyl collector, 45s are still my favorite. I mean, I love 10-inch records, but I mean, I love 45s. Like I absolutely love the I wish like I've been looking for like a dedicated like 45 player. Like a nice compact little 45 player like built for that I could shelf with my 45. You know what I mean? And because there's just something so like neat and nice about it, where it's like it's clean, it's even, you know what you're getting. And then like sometimes like with the Steely Dan expansive ones where there could be 3 or 4 tracks to a side, like you get a surprise. Um, but for the most part, you're just getting like a really high quality pressing of a song or two, or maybe more. And I don't know, I've always had a special place in my heart for 45s. I really love that particular part of the medium.
Yeah, I mean, it's often better to put out a killer two-sided 45 than an album where only third of the songs are good. So put your best foot forward. I need to find the affordable 7-inch pressing plant in the U.S. I'm still looking.
Heady Wax Fiends, people, if you know any, reach out, comment below.
So yeah, it's like
No, it's hard out there in the
moth
pressing
to
game
me.
right now. I mean, like, look, like, I mean, in the with the record making folks that I've spoken with, there's all sorts of delays with sourcing and pipelining, and these are things that the average person just doesn't really think about when it comes to producing a record. It's like the wax has to come from somewhere, the lacquers have to be cut, it has to be mixed, it has to be mastered, it has to be produced. Like, there needs to be factories that do all of these things. That there's a lot that goes into that end product that a lot of people just don't see.
And then once you have them, like the old distributors are not around. The Dutch East India Company and oh man, uh, just all the distributors that I had in the 90s, they don't exist anymore. And a lot of times there's just no way to turn a profit on a record, if you're selling it through a third party. But then if you're selling it just yourself, then you're going to sell fewer because it's not as accessible. And
Or you're going to lose money with marketing. I mean, like, because all the promotion's on you. So it's kind of like an evil catch-22. It's one of the things that I really love about, I'm going to pump them again, the Hattie Wax Fiends record club. It's a record of the month club that's sustained by the people who are the subscribers, and then all of the records are getting turned around and put into into the hands of fans who will spin them. So it's not like, records are going to sit on a shelf. Like, every record that comes every month, I put it on right there and spin. It's but when you say older distributors, I think of like with books, like Random House, or like even Scholastica with like those magazines, and like just the accessibility factor and the subscriptions, and like for $1 you get this many CDs, and it's like part of what that does is, yes, it generates income, but it also gets that media out into the hands of people. And maybe one of those albums or one of those books, etc., strikes the right chord with the right person. And that's kind of, and those distributors, those don't really exist anymore. I mean, and if they do, they're few and far between.
Yeah, we chose rather than using. I have a label, Chunk Archives Recordings, which is the 10 years after Chunk Records went down in flames.
Papa Chunk.
I rebooted the label to reissue my first of the Malarian stuff, and then it became the house label for Mal Thursday Quintet. But I chose not to self-release. I mean, it would be self-releasing because it's my label, my band, whatever. So we're releasing it on Teen Sound Records, Misty Lane out of Rome, Italy. And we just have to figure out how to get my 100 copies. From there to here, because with the tariffs and all the BS.
Talk a little bit about, because I know you and I have been talking about this a lot, but talk about what this process has been like of getting this record produced and getting the copies over and all that.
Well, it always takes longer than you'd hoped. And, I had the Liars record mastered this summer and ready to go. I had our record mixed, mastered, and ready to go. But the thing about working with a European label is I was naively unaware that Europe takes the month of August off, including like pressing plants, so I had hoped to have our record out this fall, and it'll be early 2026. So, hey, I think we are. It already is early 2026 when this.
Oh my God, it's 2026. How did we fucking do that?
Well, so
it's incredible. Secondhand talent magic. So, gotta ask, why call it the Mal Thursday Quintet?
Well, my concept behind the band was to do something between the Chuck Berry method, where you just play with a pickup band when you get to town. Well, that's not going to work for me. So I came up with the idea of doing chapters like a biker gang. So the first chapter was actually my friends in Massachusetts. I'd fly out and we would do some shows. We did our first show on April 20th, 2017. And then we played the next night in Worcester and with Muck and the Myers. And we're off to a good start. Then I had the Northwest chapter formed in 2018. So I could play this festival, Freak Out Fest, which is now called Bigfoot Stomp. And it's every year. Daryl's Tavern in Seattle, Washington. And then finally, I was living in Austin, and yet, my fly out of town to play shows. So finally attempted to put together a Texas chapter. And I was helped out by Bobby Trimble, great drummer who plays with a lot of people here in town. The Ugly Beats, the Linda Gale Lewis, Jerry Lee's sister. Anyway, Bobby, was there from the start. We had a guy, Tom Trusnovic, who's in a band called Hickoids, and a bunch of other bands too. And he was sort of my sergeant at arms. He was the bad cop. So if somebody wasn't cutting the mustard instrumentally, he would bully them until they quit. And this was such a great help because, I didn't have to be the asshole, and he was really good at it, and it worked. There was this one guy who he didn't like it when I asked him to lay out for a verse, and so he quit because he was too sensitive. But for the most part, it was Tom who helped us get to a point where we had a solid lineup. And we did until he quit and Steve, the rhythm guitar player, quit. But right before they left, we were doing your uncle's not only Rotting, which is on our first album of 6 Was 5, but we were doing Lots of Life, which is a great one. Hey, get out of the way. It's just good stuff. Anyway, so those guys quit, and it took really until now, until this, just recently we've added a multi-instrumentalist named Chris Nine, and she plays organ and guitar. So I can just pretty much be the lead singer until the encore, and then I'll get over on the keyboard for a couple of tunes at the end. But, Jeff Connolly always calls, singing and playing at the same time, as he calls it, walking and chewing gum. I'm not great at that. Like organ, you can just hold the chords, but I find it hard to play rhythmically or melodically while singing. And then inevitably both the playing and the singing suffer. So, So now the Northwest chapter is just pretty much Dave Burkham, who's a multi-instrumentalist, plays in the Reverberations and a band called Holy Denim, among others. And he played with Satan's Pilgrims for a while. But anyway, I had a whole band that was backing me up, the Reverberations, but, now it's just, I just work with the guitar player and a drummer, Tom Sullivan, aka Baron von Ludwig of the Lords of Altamont. Anyway, so now I still have the 3 chapters, but the New England chapter and the Texas chapter are the only ones that could gig. But I record with all 3 of them. Anyway, so I figured I'd call it Mal Thursday Quintet.
Since you're
at least I'll be in the band
all together. You're right. Exactly. It's very similar to former guest of the show, friend of the show, Joe Marcinek, who, when he goes out and does shows, he's putting his band together wherever he's doing the show based on who's in town. And that's just kind of, and the reason we've had him on the show, also firsthand talent, I would argue, is because he can't really work with an agent because of that, because they want to know, okay, well, who are you playing with in February of next year? And he's like, I don't know who's going to be in town where I'm going to be in February of so he puts all of his stuff together himself, which I think is super impressive, which is why he's been on the show. And yeah, having to corral your own band, and I mean, he calls it the Joe Marcinek band. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, in each chapter, that's, for his, I guess, call them chapters in the Southeast and in the Bay Area, and all the different Chicago and the different pockets that he's got, call them, the Joe Marcinek band. It makes sense, to then transfer the credits over and call it the Mal Thursday Quintet.
Yeah, and it's worked out so far. I'm pleased. 8 years on, 8.5 years on, we're still kicking ass, taking names, and
putting out new music.
Yes, we have a new record coming out on Teen Sound in Italy and in America. It'll be over here too. It's called Mods and Gods. And that's the play on Odds and Sods, which was the Who's Leftovers album that they put out in '73. Not that these are leftovers, but there's a lot of, these were singles. There's several new songs that had never been released, but a lot of the stuff we put out as singles over the last few years. So it's our difficult second album. It's the difficult second album syndrome. I mean, this record was, there's stuff that we recorded in 2017, some live material that we recorded then, and then stuff we recorded this year. So it's,
the sophomore slump is real. I mean, first of all, folks, if you haven't checked it out, again, the links to all of Mal's music, including his Bandcamp, is going to be in the description. If 6 Was 5 is a great album, I bought it on Bandcamp, so you should too. It's great music, and I'm personally looking forward to the second record. I think it's going to be great, and I think that oftentimes when things that are a true passion project do take longer, it is the product, the final product often is better for it. And I found that, just speaking from personal experience with the show, anytime there's been a guest where, we've been talking about them being on the show, and sometimes it's been in discussion since before the actual show even started. For whatever reason, life happens, people are busy, things go on, things get delayed. But every time those guests make their way onto the show, it always feels like it's the right time for them to be on the show. So, whether or not, however long the record took and however old the recordings are that you're using, or, it's still new record, and it's going to stand on its own.
Yeah, because even our first album, which I'm a little tired of because it's been 5 years, but if you've never heard it before, it's new to you. So check it out, Mal Thursday Quintet. So I'm happy that the Quintet record and Liars on Fire at the Rusty Nail 1985 are coming out on the same label, relatively close together, and I'm hoping that we make some new fans over in Europe so we can go over and do some festivals next year if possible. We'll see.
We'll see. We've got we've got a good fan base in Europe. Love every single one of you. Thank you for listening, reading, and watching. We appreciate you, and we appreciate every one of you around the world listening, reading, and watching. It really is humbling and amazing to watch this grow and see and be contacted by people from all over. And it is really, really awesome to bring someone like you on the show to talk to and just have a conversation with and just get to talk about something random for once and not just have a specific outline lineated conversation the way our audience is typically used to. This is a fun little side adventure. Mal, any words you want to leave us with before we finish?
Well, the internet's been a mixed blessing for musicians, right? Because streaming is a horrible it's a horrible ripoff where the labels and the tech bros are making all the money. But the internet has made it possible to, connect more easily with people over in Europe or in Japan or in Australia. And I've got my radio show, the Mal Thursday Show. It's been around since 1987. Link in description. And it's a music show. And every week I do a different word of the week. This week is going to be get. All songs with get in the title. And then
get back.
I've been appearing on another podcast as a couple of guys who really liked my radio show started a podcast called Shake, Rattle, and Roam. And they do a sort of a geographical trip, like here, like I was just, they just did the Texas episode, which is like almost 4 hours long.
It's got to be. Texas is fucking massive. And
I made it. I made it onto the thumbnail. They use a
nice
goofy AI cartoons. I'm like, damn, AI, you didn't do me right on that. But anyway, yeah. So I got the Mal Thursday Quintet is my passion, and I live down here in Temple, Texas, and I go to Austin to rehearse and to play shows, and was in Maine and Massachusetts in October, hoping to do the Pacific Northwest and Southern California next summer 26, and just keep doing it. And we also would like to put out, since it took us 5 years to make our second album, I want the third album to come out within 6 months of the second album. Like
there you go,
just like 1966 all over again.
There you go, yeah. And by the way, if you ever come to Chicago, Sam already said he'll play drums. So
we were planning on that. I was going to do Milwaukee, Chicago, and maybe, play in the suburbs.
Let's talk. I'll put a band together for you. We'll talk about it. Secondhand Talent, baby. The net casts wide.
Well, folks, we were talking about that back in 2020. Well, and then there's this global pandemic. It screwed everything up.
Let's resume that conversation in 2025. Folks, this has been another episode of Secondhand Talent. This is Mal Thursday, and we will see you next Wednesday. That's podcast. All right. We did it.
Right on, right on.